All right. Hey, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on which side of this vast country you're on. You have tuned into Rebel Roundup, our daily news and opinion show, which is sometimes painfully live. I am your host today, Tamara Ugolini, and I'm joined by my colleague, my friend, and our main Montreal rebel, Alexa Lavoie. How are things going over there in Montreal, Alexa?
Snow, cold. That's reality, I guess. And what about you?
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be a rainy day today in southeastern Ontario, but we have the sun shining, so I'm thankful for that. I sent my kids to school today in full snowsuits because they have an outdoor ed day today, and now I'm kind of regretting that decision because I think they're going to be boiling, which is nice. I'll take it while we can. And in light of, the world is basically turning into molten lava before, right before our eyes if you watch the mainstream media and the mainstream weather channels, that is what they would have you believe. So Sheila is traveling. She's going to be bringing you some exclusive coverage at a UN climate conference coming up in Brazil. And we'll have more on that soon, but she'll be away for the next week, I believe. So myself and the other rebels will fill in her absence. And aside from that, if you want to take part in our show, you can do so by giving us a Rumble rant or a super chat on YouTube. Or if you're watching us after the fact, we're no longer live, you can give us a super thanks. And so it's a great way for you to not only support our work and keep us afloat here at Rebel News, because this work wouldn't be possible without our viewers and supporters and their generosity, but it's also a great way for you to get your voice on a broader and larger platform. So if you have anything to contribute to the conversation, or if you have a tip for us, or just want to give us your support, we're happy to receive it through a Rumble rant or a super chat or super thanks. $5 or more donation, we will read live as possible on air as we go through the topics. So we're going to get to some chaos in Kamloops, or in British Columbia, I should say, at an unmarked grave debate brought to you by our British Columbia correspondent, Trey Humphrey. We have some crazy clips to share. We have Pierre Poilievre ripping into the CBC for their continuous biased coverage of all things politicians and the political space in Canada. And then we have a recent Liberal MP bringing forward an attempt to block scheduled deportations of international students and temporary residents. So we're going to get into all of that. I think first and foremost, we'll get right into the Kamloops stuff. We had sent, or Drea had gone to cover this event that happened. This event that happened yesterday at the Thompson Rivers University, TMU. The university called this, of course, an unsanctioned rally. And it was, the likes of Francis Whittleson and Jim McMurdy, who have both been big dissenters of the unmarked mass grave claim that 215 children are buried at the Kamloops former residential school site. As we know, no evidence has been provided to ascertain that claim. And the band itself, the Tk'emlúps Secwépemc band, changed their language. I believe that was in 2023. They now call them unmarked anomalies, not unmarked graves. So, the proof right there, right from the horse's mouth, is in the pudding, that they themselves now are no longer contributing to that mass hysteria that ensued in 2021. We saw Prime Minister at the time, Justin Trudeau, fly out for his little teddy bear photo op. I don't know if we have the viz to show of that, but he laid this little teddy bear at one of the graves, and just took this as verbatim, that this was a fact. And despite millions in funding to find any evidence or proof, nothing 4 years plus later has been brought forward. So Drea was there covering this event with these dissenters and authors, giving the facts instead of just generating more hysteria based on feelings. And this first clip that we have is, really, I mean, it won't come to any surprise to you, Alexa, when you're out in the field, the way that you're treated. But Drea had two security guards with her. This is just the state of Canada and independent press heading out into these hostile, especially sadly, hostile university environments, which were previously, like historically, universities are places where you debate ideas, and the arena of ideas are supposed to be ripe and fresh and there to debate and sift through. And sadly, now they've just become a place of violence and censorship and like vile rhetoric. And so you can see that on full display in this clip here from Drea from yesterday.
I think independent media is like your only real media if you get. Excuse me.
Allowed permits to film on campus?
Excuse me, sir.
Ma'am, were you allowed permits to film on campus?
Excuse me.
Were you allowed permits to film on
I'm
campus?
in the middle of doing a report.
That's fantastic. Were you allowed a permit by the campus, by the university?
This is a public place.
No, it's not. It's a private.
All right. Triggering.
On this campus that you did not receive. You're here without authorization.
All right, you guys.
Are
you kicking people? She's not kicking anyone. You guys are bullies. Move out of the way.
Ma'am, I'm asking you a question. You're a reporter.
I don't know
I'm
who
asking
you
you
are.
a question.
Yeah, okay.
You're
Well,
a
I'm the one who asks questions. I'm in the middle. You can wait. How about this? Why don't you wait until I'm done doing what I'm doing?
No, you don't show up
All right.
on this campus.
So, anyways.
And then disrespect the people that are here.
You know, it's sad. It really is sad. Like, to be so angry about the good news that there have not been 215 children's remains, and to ignore everything, all of the evidence that suggests there has been a manipulation with the tax dollars and what are being used, and to act like it's an us against them kind of thing, to say, hey, those kids didn't die. It's like the new form of Munchausen syndrome or something. Like they get a payoff from thinking these kids were murdered. Over 100 bands made the same false claims, meaning unproven, and not a single one has found a single body to date. Yet our university students believe that it's true. They don't have the facts. They don't have the reason. They just have the narrative, and they're so passionate about it. It's sick. It's concerning. But you know what? Things like this get people thinking, right? And that's what this is all about. You know, one of the ladies said, this isn't the right space. Why don't you guys just come to the university and have a debate? I would love that. I have reached out so many times, of course, to the band, to the government to have these conversations. But I would love to have that debate. So I wanted to get her name. There she is. I'm going to try to get her name because she wants to facilitate that. I would love to, maybe host that. We could have Dr. Francis Widdowson, all of those things. But I've ranted enough. There will be more at this at our special website called camloopsdocumentary.com.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that documentary, it is a great one and sounds like it's worth a sequel, because this story is obviously not going anywhere at all. Alexa, you're used to that. You now need security anywhere you go in Montreal. Antifa is so out of control, violent. Canada doesn't take the same steps as they did in the US to declare it an international terrorist entity, an organization. What are your thoughts on how Drea was treated there?
First of all, I'm happy to see that the students are not as radical as in Montreal. Probably me, I would have received already paint or something on me. But the facts, actually the key here is facts. She was there to spread facts to students who should be there to learn. But instead of that, they do not want her facts because it doesn't go to their narrative. They don't want to say, oh, okay, you're right. No, they don't want that. They don't want debate. They want to shut down everything that they believe is actually propaganda. And they will just continue. And you will actually expect that in a university, students will want to learn. They will want to hear different ideas. But what we are seeing since a couple of years. It's that in university campuses, it's actually almost impossible to bring different ideas and to engage in debate. And I'm really worried for the next generation.
Yeah, and the one thing that caught my eye from that clip also was I presume a student coming in so hot and heavy right off the bat, asking Drea if she has a permit or an authorization to film on campus. I mean, this is so authoritarian, that you would see more in like a state-controlled society rather than one that's, supposed to be free and democratic. And again, universities are supposed to be bastions of free expression and inquiry and debate and bringing the ideas to the arena to be debated. And yet they're just like parroting this idea that first you have to seek some sort of futile bureaucratic approval or authorization to, record a video or conduct interviews in these public spaces. That is stuff that we traditionally and typically would associate with a communist regime. This squashing of creativity, of thought, freedom of expression, journalism, free and democratic press, like free press is the cornerstone of democracy. This is crazy to think that any of that would require permission from state or university authority. This is the state of inquiry and schooling in 2025. There's not much inquiry happening, that's for sure.
Let me just quote Charlie Kirk. When people stop talking, it's when violence happens. And the fact that in university, it's really difficult now to have like some people from like outsider who wants to come on campus and engage in debate with students. And right away you have like the people who own the university who say, no, that's not going to happen. You actually create this environment. You are creating that violence that will arise afterwards because you are blocking debate. You are blocking exchange of idea. And one part of it, I will blame the university, and I will blame also some of the teachers who are literally brainwashing those kids, those students. I know that in university it's not kids anymore, but it's just like a continuation of what we are seeing in secondary school, college, and the rest of like the study.
Yeah. Well, we have this other clip here also from Drea. It's just a 15-second one, but she calls this her favorite moment from the wild coverage of Dr. Francis Widdowson, Jim McMurdy, and of course, 1BC was also there as well.
Face.
What's so funny?
What's so funny?
You're funny. You're funny.
Is Lord? What's your point?
Standing for hate.
We're just working, doing our job. Face.
Yeah, and they're just they're just clearly laughing at them, and this idea, like it's like we're holier than thou. We're just going to look down on you, the wrong thinker, and we're going to dismiss anything that you have to say and laugh at you because we're better than you are. And we know more and we're more enlightened. And how dare you question our truth? That's the mindset that you're finding on these university campuses. And there it is in your face. They're laughing as Drea tries to record a monologue in front of the camera about the event unfolding at this university campus. It is absolutely disgraceful.
And I've been to university, and on my time, actually, we're more like open to debate. I just don't know what happened in between like my time and now.
Yeah. Well, exactly. There's a comment here, actually, I wanted to read from the section of that video. This Must Love Stocks writes, It was a wildly sad example of emotionally stunted and brainwashed people not having skills to listen to someone's point of view that differs from theirs. Close-minded, obnoxiously rude, completely shameful. I was embarrassed for such toddler-like tantrums. I mean, I think that pretty much nails it right there.
It's exactly what is happening, and it's exactly what we should be worried about, and it's exactly what we should look into, because people are forgetting sometimes that this is our next generation will build our country. And if those people cannot engage in conversation and accept the facts, I don't know where we are going towards to.
Yeah, exactly. We have another clip here that comes from 1BC. So that's the newly formed political party in British Columbia, with Dallas Brody and Tara Armstrong at the helm. And so they posted this clip of some of the attempts at debate that happened yesterday.
The irony of the sign. Super powerful argument. I fear for the future more than ever.
Yeah.
This is exactly some tactic being used in authoritarian dictatorship country, where you try to suppress the dissident voice by screaming as loud as you can to make sure that we can't hear them. And the fact that they bring again fascism and probably like Nazi or all derogatory term, it's just a way to justify their action against you, because first of all, they don't know what is fascism, because fascism is not what was happening. Like when you are just going to report and just to bring facts, that's not fascism. That's just being like a common sense person, just being there to report on the story. It seems like the meaning of the words have lost their meaning.
Well, the words have been perverted to fit a certain ideology. And so, unfortunately, when they've been perverted and used in a way that's not accurate or fitting, then the words lose their meaning. And so we see that happening more and more. People are like, yeah, okay, I know you're going to call me a racist, but you just call anyone you disagree with a racist. So what does that even mean now? And you're acting like a fascist and engaging in fascist-like tactics and then calling me a fascist. So that really doesn't bother me anymore, because obviously the meaning of fascism has changed. And well, not necessarily that it's changed, but it's been perverted and subverted in a way that's no longer what the root of the word actually means.
And that's a slippery slope. That's a huge slippery slope.
And I think this is the last clip that we have from this one. Also comes from 1BC, where they post Dallas Brody and Jim McMurdy came with facts and evidence. The left came with noise to drown out the truth. Watch this. Yeah, and so I mean, it's on full display, and so many people now are seeing this. And I think that, to tie it back into the initial and original clip that we showed of her presence and the coverage at this event, is that people are seeing these tactics, and they're starting to wake up more and more and say, you know what, this doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you have all of this, like if you have the truth on your side, if you have the evidence, if you have the facts, then why do you need to act like a tantruming toddler? That just, it doesn't make logical sense that you would need to conduct yourself in that way. And so more people are starting to see this for what it is. They're starting to ask more questions, starting to go, well, wait a minute, why are you calling them anomalies now if there's still this idea that there are 215 child graves in this space that we know now could have very well been like a septic drain system, or in one, I think it was Saskatchewan, when they did actually excavate a residential school property, they just found debris and trash, like it was a buried landfill essentially. So this idea that there are still 215 unmarked child graves at the Kamloops Indian Residential School without any evidence to show that that's accurate, based on highly inaccurate ground penetrating radar, and the fact the band themselves now calls these anomalies instead of graves. I mean, I think all of that just kind of speaks for itself, but you can't even get that point across because they've brought drums and song to drown out any questions or facts that could be shared. And for Drea, even something that was really compelling for me to hear her say is this should be celebrated. They should be like, okay, this is great to know that there weren't 215 child deaths at this location. That is, we should be rejoicing. Yeah, there's Justin Trudeau with his little teddy bear putting it at the site of the alleged unmarked graves, now called anomalies. But why aren't we rejoicing? We know now that there is just some sort of like underground, a well or weeping tiles or some other thing, just could be a collection of sticks and rocks for all we know. Let's rejoice about that. Let's celebrate. That's great to know that there wasn't 215 children that died at this location. But instead, they have to buckle down on their rhetoric because there's a lot of money at stake for this investigation and excavation, which has never happened. And yet, where'd the money go? I think that's a good sequel for the Kamloops documentary, but stay tuned. Maybe we'll have more on that.
And the fact that it's not because you're seeing like there's no unmarked grave there, that doesn't downplay that, yes, some people have been suffering in the past and there is outrageous things that happened in the past. This is just about the big psyop that happened at this place that was fake, that actually hurt more the native, that this is a psyop, that if it was real, it just bring back all emotion about what happened in the past. For what? For absolutely nothing. So literally, this hurt more the native than anything else.
Right. It's almost like rehashing old trauma just for
nothing.
For nothing, for just empty claims that had no merit or any sound evidence to go off of from the onset, right? From the onset, if we had a mainstream media that actually did their jobs and said, well, wait a minute, ground penetrating radar, how accurate can this be? And how can you make this assertion based on this piece of technology that's prone to misdiagnoses and, skewed results? Like, how do you know for certain? If they had literally just asked that, we would be in a very different place 3-4 years later than we are because of their failures.
And probably we will have not as many church burned.
Yeah, over 100 and continuing, right? Like that hasn't stopped. The vandalisms, the burnings, the threats, the attacks on Christianity, all of those things persist to this day. And most people, especially those, aged 55 and up, who watch the CBC, who depend on their 6 p.m. nightly news to get their information, they have no idea that the band doesn't even call these unmarked graves anymore and instead refers to them as anomalies because they don't hear that anywhere in the mainstream news. But you can go back to their press releases and source it for yourself to see. But, you know, when you're an aging elderly demographic who doesn't know how to navigate technology or research things on your own, you rely on that nightly news channel to keep you informed. And sadly, they haven't upheld their end of the bargain to do that in a way that's balanced, appropriate, and adequate, or accurate for that matter. So we have one YouTube chat. Thank you very much to Mimo, gives $5 and says, if the Liberals get a majority and pass the censorship bill, what happens to Rebel News? What happens to Rebel News whenever there is
what happens
adversity?
to everybody?
We fight. You fight, you resist, you take legal action. I think at Rebel News, you know, one thing is obviously we don't back down, and we will take that legal fight and that legal battle to the end. I hope that it's not my screen that's frozen. I feel like it might be.
No, you're not from my side.
My screen. Okay. I'm just turning off my other internet here so that it doesn't happen again. But anyway, what happens to Rebel News is we fight, we resist, and we persist in our mandate and our objective to bring you the truth and to bring you the facts wherever they may lead, while telling you the other side of the story that you are not going to get from the mainstream. We hear, you know, you can see it for yourself. Again, if the mainstream had have just said, how do you make those claims of 215 mass graves based on ground penetrating radar? And why does the Kamloops to Shumwik band now call those anomalies instead of graves? That's it. Ask those two questions. It's not that hard, but they don't do it.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's hit an ad break and then we'll come back for more.
You like the hat? Me too. Same strong message about making Canada great again, but in a really cool color, black and gold. There's other colors available, and it's an all-Canadian site. So if you want to signal your tribe or trigger a Liberal, go to mcgahats.ca today.
Gun bans make great distractions.
Trudeau may be gone, but Carney has picked up his same rhetoric.
We will quickly, and I mean quickly, reinvigorate the buyback of
Hunters, collectors, competitors, and defenders of tradition are still being targeted, while criminals run wild under Liberal policy. But we are fighting back. Join us, Canada's National Firearms Association, in defense of freedom.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
All right. Next, we have Pierre Poilievre responding to the recent floor crossing by one MP and the resignation of another Conservative MP, which gives the Liberals 2 seats away from a majority government. So some Conservatives, I would say, are kind of squirmish about that. And so in this first clip, Pierre Poilievre is asked about his leadership, which it was basically equated to being run as though it's like a frat house. And here is his response.
Said your leadership is why he crossed the floor. How do you respond to comments that your caucus is not united right now?
Well, first of all, I just quote Mr. d'Entremont, who said, and I quote, "Since I first elected here in 2019, the cost of living has skyrocketed. Even then, families in Nova Scotia, as it is now, as it was called at the time back, but is now Acadie and Annapolis, we're struggling. We warned that the Liberals out of control spending and massive deficits were irresponsible, but of course they did not listen. Now, after 6 months under the new Prime Minister Mark Carney, who promised fiscal discipline, Canadians are still waiting. He said, Mr. Carney said, I'm quoting Mr. d'Entremont here, Mr. Carney said he would be judged by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Canadians are judging him and they are not impressed. Since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%, said Mr. d'Entremont. We have heard it many times here today. It is deliberate and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane for a G7 country, said Mr. d'Entremont of Liberal policies. He said, we are a rich country. We are a food basket of a country. We can produce all the food for many people in the world, and we can barely feed ourselves for some reason, end quote. That is how Mr. d'Entremont described the outrageous cost of living as the direct result of Mark Carney's Liberals. I'm very saddened for the Nova Scotia families on whom Mr. Carney and Mr. d'Entremont are raising the price of groceries and homes, but that will not change our resolve to continue to fight for an affordable Canada, affordable budgets, and an affordable future. Thank you.
Yeah, it really makes me question and wonder what his voting base thinks of all of this. Right, because I do note that the CBC put out an article, I guess it's last week, but highlighting that, yes, Canadian history and the political space is, floor crossing does happen, and it happens quite often. But the voting base is often really upset when it does. And I don't know how anyone who voted for a Conservative in their riding and his constituents themselves would feel after seeing and feeling in their pocketbooks the failed policies of the Liberals, as was brought up and reiterated in that clip by Pierre Poilievre. If you're a constituent, let us know what you think of that floor crossing. And there's no recourse or legislation. It's legal, but there's no recourse for voters who feel slighted after a floor crossing like that, and especially in such tumultuous times, and when it's such a close there's such a close majority government at stake there. Two more Conservatives cross the floor. Oh, I think we might have just lost my audio. Can you hear me okay?
It's fine.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Anyway, and then so we have this other, so it was actually the other clip I was initially referring to when Poilievre's leadership and the way the Conservative Party is being run was called equivalent to a frat house, basically.
Aaron Collins, CBC. So Chris d'Entremont, just turning back to last week, said that your party is being run like a frat house. So I'm just curious what you think he means by that, and if you think.
Well, I think that CBC had to be. Are you with CBC, by the way?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay, right.
I'm just curious if you think that could lead to more MPs leaving your caucus, and what you think he means by that.
Well, first of all, CBC has had to correct the falsehoods that they put into that story. So I encourage you to tell Canadians about the falsehoods you published and explain why you did that. But I would ask if you agree with Mr. d'Entremont, or you believe he was telling the truth when he said, and I'm going to quote, "Now, after 6 months under a new Prime Minister who promised financial discipline, Canadians are still waiting." He said that he would be judged by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed. Since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%. We have heard it many times here today. It is deliberate, and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane for a G7 country. Mr. d'Entremont said that Liberal food price inflation is inhumane. Do you believe that he was telling the truth when he said that? Yes. Oh, you can.
I want to ask you questions.
I did already. I already said that your report from CBC was wrong, and we have corrected the record. We put out a statement. We stand by the statement. But I have a statement here from Mr. d'Entremont. He says, since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%. We've heard it many times here today. It is deliberate and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane in a G7 country. Do you agree with Mr. d'Entremont that Mark Carney's food price inflation is inhumane?
So again, I asked you if you thought that if what you thought Mr. d'Entremont meant by your party being run like a frat.
Well,
whether or not you thought that would lead to more MPs leaving your caucus. That's the question for you, sir.
No. So I answered your question. And so the answer that I have back to you is that Mr. d'Entremont this is a quote from just a few months ago, where he said that Liberal food price inflation was inhumane. And you know what? He's right. Thank you.
You know, my thought on this, literally to see someone who is in the Conservative Party to cross to the Liberal Party, it seems like that will happen less often than the opposite. You know what I mean? Because Conservative hold really strong values. They stand by it, and you know they have really specific values. And to see that he did that, it kind of like questioned me if, first of all, it was not offered maybe a position at the Liberal Party. I think it took like a certain time where he got offered many stuff. And the fact also that among the Conservative Party, there is red Tory and blue Tory. And we all know that there is, inside of the Conservative Party, unfortunately, some people who I don't think they like Pierre Poilievre that much. Just example, in Quebec, they actually supported Jean Charest instead of like Pierre Poilievre during the leadership race. So we know that there is some rhetoric among the Conservative Party. So I don't know if Chris d'Entremont is one of them, but I know that most of the red Tory are actually in the East Coast and not in the West Coast. So it's unfortunate, but the question about the frat house, what is this kind of question?
Yeah, it's I think it's grasping at straws. It's pretty far-reaching, and at this point, like even during the recent federal snap election in April, I was looking at the Liberal candidates, and I was just thinking to myself, how do you align with a party that has run this country into the dirt for the last 10 years? I don't know how anyone in good faith could support the Liberal Party of Canada at this point under Justin Trudeau, now under Mark Carney, who has just been whispering in the ear of Trudeau for the last several years, primarily from COVID onward. It's not a based party, and they don't follow, many politicians are guilty of breaking their promises and not following through on their words. But the fact that Canadians from coast to coast to coast are struggling so deeply now in 2025, it's so bad that you can't ignore it. Food bank usage is at peak. The food banks are overwhelmed. They can't keep up with the demand. The influx of unmitigated, unfettered migration, including illegals and people who are flagged as having serious security risks, being given free passes into the country. All of our social safety nets are either strained or on the brink of collapse. And I don't know anyone who in good faith could support a party that made all of that possible at this point.
And it's not if Mark Carney have done something great. Literally, since he has been elected, we are actually worse than before. There is nothing that what he did promise happened. Literally, we are just there waiting, and I have just the impression that instead of really working for Canadian at this moment, is working to get the majority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to throw to this one super chat we have. Politicians Never Lie gives $5.55. Thank you very much. Thursday Smoke Show, great work. Thank you for continuing to spread the truth of what's going down nationally. Yes, and thank you for your continued support. Alexa, we have a French super chat as well. JP Power from Windsor.
Alexa, vous êtes la meilleure. Alexa, you are the best. I am English.
No, read it in French.
Je suis Canadien-Anglais. I am English-Canadian. Je voudrais étudier le français, mais maintenant j'étudie l'espagnol. I would love to study French, but now I'm studying Spanish. Mais je suis allée au Québec 2 fois, je l'aime. But I went to Quebec twice and I love it. Merci pour votre travail. Thank you for your work. $10. Thank you so much. I like when people are sending me like French chat.
And I love when you read it in French. I unfortunately am not bilingual and I would never even know. I would just absolutely butcher that. So thank you, Alexa, for reading it in French. I love hearing you speak French. Your native tongue. And I know that English has not come easy to you the last few years, but I would say that like it is night and day from where you were when you started with Rebel to where you are now. So I love that. I just wanted to note, we got this, I think this came out just like right as we were coming on to the live stream. It comes from the Justice Center of Constitutional Freedoms. And Francis, so apparently at that rally yesterday, the Thompson Rivers University threatened to trespass Dr. Francis Widdowson for attempting to speak on their campus. And then so the JCCF said if Dr. Widdowson is charged with trespassing at the university, the Justice Center will fund lawyers to defend her charter right to free expression. Universities should be places for debate, not censorship. Once again, nails it. And they share this clip, actually, maybe we should play this clip here of from the New Westminster Times of looks like a bit of a commentary or back and forth between the protesters and Dr. Widdowson.
Have you seen that? But it matters, right? Because we want the truth to be. We want the truth on this. Don't spread your misinformation on the internet.
This is a bigger issue than just the body. This is that thousands of Indigenous people. It's a big issue. This is hurting Canada. This is hurting us. This is hurting Canada and our province. And when you
that's hurting Canada.
When there's a lie, no. When there's a lie, you can't build on it. You can't be here. You know that there are 250.
Yeah, so there you have it. And Frances Widdowson was canceled from Mount Royal University for her work and her writing the book, The Grave Error. And so she breaks down the facts, the twists, the turns, everything involved in this claim of 215 mass graves. In that book, Drea has, and here at Rebel News, we have interviewed her extensively, covered this topic. As mentioned, Drea has a documentary dedicated to it at the Kamloops documentary, or maybe it's just kamloopsdocumentary.com. And so if you haven't seen that, I believe it's free for viewing. And so I would highly recommend everyone go and watch that for themselves. And so much more information obviously has come to light since that time, which is why I keep saying there needs to be a sequel and we need to know where the money went, millions of tax dollars to fund this mass grave fiasco. And anyway, so we will move on. There's a couple more topics. Oh, if I can click in the proper spots. I wanted to, because I just mentioned the kind of mass unfettered immigration that we've seen in the country, really skyrocketing since the Liberals took power in 2015, but then especially out of control, unprecedented from 2022 onward. And like you can look at the charts from Statista or even StatsCan, and like the graphs are, I mean, it speaks for itself. It's record breaking. And then here we have, this comes from Blacklock's reporter, an Liberal MP, so just sponsored a Commons petition to grant federal aid and permanent residency to foreign students and migrant workers facing departure or deportation. And notably, there are more than 3 million foreigners in Canada on valid or expired temporary work permits, and that's based on official estimates. And many of those are coming due for expiry if they aren't already. So this petition E-6940 says government messaging remains vague and inconsistent. Canada must provide clear timelines and realistic pathways to permanence for those who have already demonstrated their commitment to this country. Well, I would say if that were the case, then they could take reasonable steps and action to get a permanent pathway to citizenship. And if one doesn't exist, then the rules are you have to go home. Some of the people that come here on for temporary foreign workers, or especially the international student visas, were also sold on the fact that they could come here and then transition to a permanent residency. And so these migration and immigration farms, going back to their home countries even, will sell people, and they literally buy into this idea that they can be given this fast track or this pathway to permanent residency. And when it doesn't come to fruition, they're left high and dry, and the people who sold them on this idea are making all the profits. So there's all of these like spider web, twisty, turny involvements here by various actors, state actors or otherwise. And so I don't always think it's not always the fault of the international student per se. But if you're due for deportation and your visa is expiring, well, guess what? Like, you have to go. We can't expect people to come here and find some sort of loophole to stay and then expect that they will uphold our laws and regulations if they're coming here intent on breaking them from the onset, right? I'm not saying that everyone is guilty of that, but there are certainly people who are trying to capitalize on some of those loopholes. And I think that's just a recipe for disaster.
Okay, just do the portrait, just like globally. We have people who are crossing our border, our land border, illegally. Then they hide for a certain amount of time, then they claim refugees, so they are bypassing the third safe country agreement. On those refugees, some of them will be used to do the same thing. So actually doing human smuggling. So we have now a big organization now crossing people over. Some of them, they would never claim refugee. They are just working illegally, and we don't even know that they are inside our country. We have people using some fraud and scam regarding a student visa or other like working visa that are arriving here in Canada. We have also some people who are using tourist visa, arriving, turning themselves into refugee. At one point, where we will say we need to stop everything right now, we need to look at what is going on, where is the scam, where the people are abusing the system, also reinforcing our border, our land border, looking at everything, imposing visa to countries that are highly, to turn themselves into refugee when they are coming here. We need to strengthen our immigration system, because where we are going into with like now the new bill that wants to just permit people to pass along to their children their nationality, like their citizenship, we will just, Canada will not exist anymore. we will not be able to say this is Canada, because Canada will not be recognizable. And that is not being extreme. This is just preserving what means to be Canadian.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there is a very clear distinction between what this petition is saying, which is specific to temporary residents, temporary foreign workers, and international students. And those are different, and they're classified differently than refugees. But there are absolutely fake and fraudulent refugee claims that are coming into this country, seeking refugee status, and then capitalizing on all of the free, right? I just did a write up on how the government's internal memos was don't say free healthcare, but it is free healthcare because the people that come to utilize that healthcare aren't paying into that social safety net like taxpayers are. But what I was just going to say is that the Canadian Border Services Agency lost track of hundreds of thousands of people who are due for deportation or not here legally. And so 500,000 people is a lot of people that you just all of a sudden have no recourse for, and they are not supposed to be in this country. We can't even find them to say, okay, see you later, you're headed back home. That is highly concerning. And I would argue that because it's not being addressed, it hasn't been dealt with, that number only continues to grow.
And the people who are saying, like, it's for helping, it's a humanitarian, like, being to just welcome as much as possible. I just want to remember people that what we are receiving, some of them actually are committing fraud and illegal acts. But most of the people who are arriving in Canada have the money and the means for coming here. If you really want to help, is the people who are in need, who don't have the money to come here in Canada, who are actually waiting legally to come here in Canada. It's those people that we need to prioritize. Because if you look at, there is billions of people around the world. It's not by having like 1 million per year of people who are actually the richest or the people who have all the means from their country that we will actually help the world.
Yeah, and we need to have proper policy and proper planning before we open the floodgates, right? The infrastructure wasn't there before the Liberals said, yes, Canada, we're so welcoming and inclusive and diversity is our strength. Come one, come all. And now we have housing crisis, healthcare crisis, and things like transit and education are crumbling. So we weren't prepared for the massive influx of people that have come into this country in the last, especially 3 years, but spanning over really the last decade, who also came primarily into the Greater Toronto area. Like Ontario receives half of all total immigration and refugees, what have you, right into centralized Greater Toronto and Greater Hamilton area. And that space is like quite literally buckling at the seams. So we can't just have all this, it's so humanitarian and it's compassion. And then when immigrants show up, they're like, wait, where am I going to live? And where am I going to work? And what you're telling me, I just have to go live on the streets and frequent this food bank now because there wasn't the infrastructure, the planning in place to make sure that we had somewhere to go. That's not compassion by any stretch of the word. And that's what's happening. So it all needs to be reined in and reconfigured. And quickly, because the longer this continues to persist, and I would say these mediocre attempts at capping some of these levels that the Liberals have put in recently under Mark Carney are not sufficient at all because of the mass influx and the unprecedented levels that we have seen that like dwarf these levels dwarf historical averages and historical norms. And there's no ignoring that. And pointing it out isn't racist. So that's where we are in Canada in 2025. But I see that there is a ad read here from Ramshorn Coffee, and maybe we'll have another minute or so to touch on one of our extra topics if you want to pick one, Alexa, while I read this quick script. As I mentioned, it's from Ramshorn Coffee. It's a veteran-owned and operated roast-to-order coffee company in South Carolina. While there are some great authentic coffee brands out there we admire and support, there's some that just want your money. We're tired of the circus of corporate fake conservative brands hawking catchy slogans and silly merch. You want real coffee, not a gimmick. So here's the deal. There's no games and no fine print. Go to www.ramshorncoffee.com, use code RAMMED15 and take 15% off your order plus free shipping anywhere in the lower 48. So that's specific to the United States. That's it. You buy coffee, we roast it, bag it, and ship it. Liberty tastes better at dawn. Wake up, wild, roast free. We have some slogans too. Maybe we'll make merch, but for now, just clean, delicious coffee. Come up with your own. We lobbed a softball with this name, Rammed 15 at checkout for 15% off and free shipping. That's ramshorncoffee.com. Yeah, we'll have to get some more Canadian-centric ads from Rumble. We know obviously they have a strong US based base. So we'll have to try to get some more Canadian available product from now on. All right, Alexa, do you want to take it off with the last topic for today?
Yes, because since I'm with you, why not touching about like the Public Health Agency of Canada lost more than 20 million worth of pharmaceutical products from the national stockpile this year because of what it called a temperature deviation.
A deviation, yeah. So they didn't they didn't keep their fridges at the right temperature or something like this. So this figure was reported in the 2025 public accounts. This comes from CTV News. But of course, Health Canada refuses to say what was lost. And then they cite national security implications. You know, I have a report, maybe it went out while we were on the live stream, but I have a report. I just got an access to information request back about the Federal Service Pride Week that happened this past year. And I filed for access to information about all the costs associated with this, like, just crucial week-long Pride Federal Service Week that happens separate from actual, like, Pride, all the Pride parades and things like this. This is specific to the federal government. All the various bureaucracies and government agencies have their own Federal Services Pride Week. If you haven't heard about it, go look, because I've done a few reports. It is as crazy as you think that it is. But anyway, one of the access to information requests that came back, they redacted all of their costs of this breakfast, and I hope the report went out. Otherwise, I'll just tease it a little bit. Citing national security, essentially, like they hid it as though it were deemed a trade secret, and it was like the cost per pancake for this breakfast. It is craziness. So the fact that Health Canada is refusing to say what was lost and they're citing national security implications, that is not far-fetched, because that's what the lengths that this like open and transparent government will go to make sure that you don't actually know what they're doing behind closed doors. But also what this makes me think and wonder is if it had to do with the COVID vaccines, because we know that some of them had to be capped at such a specific and low refrigeration temperature that I would wager a bet that wasn't being upheld with some of the storage capacity stuff, and a bunch of them had to be thrown out as a result. I mean, that's just my own personal speculation, but I would say it may very well be those, because they have such finicky and specific temperature requirements for storage.
And the fact that there will be no accountability, nobody will face like any consequences for who actually like didn't preserve correctly like the pharmaceutical products. It's not just $1, it's $20 million from taxpayer that is being thrown into the garbage.
Yeah. Oh, and there's never accountability. That's become the cornerstone of the Liberals, which again is why I'm like, how could anyone in good faith cross the floor over to the Liberals? Look at the sweeping and broad mismanagement. You can see it in these daily crumbs of stories, 20 million here, couple million there, redacting our pancake mix based on trade secrets there. Like, it is just absolutely ridiculous and absurd, the things that they're doing and getting away with. And I tied it back to, in the report that I just did, in 2016, Bev Oda, a conservative MP, resigned over a national scandal involving a $16 glass of orange juice.
Yeah, I remember that.
And these people, one of the receipts was a $200 charge for a large drink. And no one's going to resign over that. Absolutely not. Why would they?
There is always a double standard. It just remind me, I don't know if you saw recently, I covered the municipal election when some of the more conservative party leaning had to make their candidate resign over, like, I would say really bad jokes that they made online. But the other candidate that was with the far left party literally called for killing politicians who don't think the same way that him.
Yeah.
It was allowed to stay into the race. And I just learned yesterday, and that will be part of my report, apparently he has been added on a watch list. So there is the US who are taking that really seriously. So what I know is he's not allowed to go to the US, but he's still allowed to run for the mayoral race in Montreal. This is how Canada is crazy.
It's so corrupt. So corrupt. Anyway, we are out of time on this Thursday Rebel Roundup. Join us back here, same time and place, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow for the roundtable. And I'll be seeing you again more next week in Sheila's absence. Thanks everybody who contributed to the live stream through your super chats or super rumble rants, super thanks. Everybody in the back end who make sure this stream runs as smoothly as possible, and all the links are ready for you to be able to find us easily. Thank you, Alexa, for filling in Sheila's place today. And until next time, stay sane and question everything.
Big news, Rebel News now has premium memberships on X, Locals, and right here on YouTube. For just $4.99 a month on YouTube, you'll get loyalty badges, custom emojis, and access to members-only chats during our live streams. At $8.99 a month, you'll also unlock Rebel News Plus shows and our documentaries. But here's the catch. YouTube could cancel that premium tier at any time. That's why the best way to support us is at rebelnewsplus.com. It's just $8 a month, cheaper if you go annual, and you'll get exclusive extras like an ad-free site, comments access, and even the chance to submit op-eds. Wherever you join us, thanks for keeping our independent journalism